Oh shit! Elizabeth Warren's older brother died. Oh, damn! Oh. Sorry, I'm just fucking around. It's really serious though. People of color are dying of this COVID thing, like in way greater numbers than white people. So we really should be mindful of that. Shouts out, first responders. Shouts out. Remember 9/11. Shouts out. All right. This is The Great Satan, a podcast specifically about elements of American imperialism, big, small, indifferent. I think today we're going to talk about mostly like 90s bad drum tone. I think that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm here with Jeremy. Do I say your whole last name or I just say Jer Bear?
You need to say Jeremy or Jer Bear. That's fine.
Cool. All right. So I didn't know if I was supposed to say last name. Good job not putting it in the thing because it will say that on the Zoom.
Yeah.
Smart. Yeah. Woo! I don't know. That was a high energy start. I just wanted to like.
It was.
Woo!
It's only going down. It's only going down from here.
Yeah, I'm losing energy now. I got a Craftsman video opened up. I didn't open up my theme song, Ministry, Great Satan. So this is the theme song.
I believe the title was Bin Laden Determined to Attack Inside the United States.
That's better. It's weird that like industrial music became associated with like redneckery, you know?
That is interesting. Yeah. I mean, I like some of it. I'm not like super into it, but a lot of the folks that I know that were into it definitely fall under that. Also, I want to start off by saying, big fan. Send all the episodes.
All two?
All of them.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Appreciate it.
I dig it. Long time listener, first time caller.
Nice. Nice. Are we gonna start talking about Building 7? Or I don't know.
Was that a 9/11 reference? What happened to the World Center?
Reference for sure.
Oddly enough, I was reading conspiracies about that the other day, and it was in some random thing, and somebody brought it up, and it was like a Facebook post. It was like some Facebook friend, I can't remember who it was, but they posted, and it was like, "Open your eyes, sheep." And I don't know about you, but when when somebody starts with "Open your eyes, sheep," it definitely makes me really not want to listen to anything they say after that.
Yeah, for sure. 100.
It has the opposite effect.
Yeah, for sure. But it's wild, man. When you look at the documents, you really start to wonder. No.
There's definitely some weird stuff that happened. I'm not going to pretend to know anything other than what I saw. Obviously, everybody kind of has like their experience with it. Obviously, there's a lot of tragedy that came out of it. What's really interesting though is how we responded to that versus how we're responding to the current issues in our country. Look at that segue.
Right.
More deaths in the U.S. from the current pandemic than happened on 9/11, which was obviously tragic. But when you put it in that, when I saw that stat, that kind of really helped put it in perspective for me of like, not that I didn't really have what I thought was a good perspective, but hearing that versus that and knowing how, as a 7th grader, watching that, how that impacted me versus, now, like, I can kind of access that emotion again and like, holy crap, like that's crazy that 50,000 people have died in the U.S. alone. And before anybody comes in and is like, oh, the flu. And what's really funny, I saw a really great meme about it. It was actually a picture of the Twin Towers falling, and then it was like some guy being like, yeah, but flu deaths.
Right.
And it's like, two terrible things can happen concurrently and also be terrible at the same time. We can process more than one bad thing
Right.
at one time. At least I can. I don't know. Maybe they can.
For
But
sure.
yeah, but seeing that put it really into perspective of like, oh wow, like this is a serious thing, and you know, I don't know anybody. Oh, hang on. Hello. Wow. Okay. Dropped it there. I don't know anybody personally that's had it or been affected by it. But you know, when you see those stats, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the stats parts is ridiculous. I do know. So I have, I know two people that are dead from it. Um, I'm not gonna like drop their names on a thing
Yeah.
expressly, a leftist anti-imperialist podcast, but and politicize their deaths. But
Yeah.
yeah, it is. Obviously it's happening to real people.
Yeah.
And then there is the other like demand side recession part that's starving people to death. So like there's that whole part of it too, where people aren't
Sure.
getting the any kind of like assistance as workers. So that part sucks.
Yeah, and you know, look, I'll give you my perspective. Look, I don't know much about the guys that you've had on. I think I'm I'm not quite as radical you would say. I'm pretty normal as far as my views and stuff. But dude, like I have a family, you know, like I have a family I have to take care of, and I'm out of work right now. I got my last paycheck on the 10th of April. Luckily, it was a whole paycheck, and you know we're making do with it. I called all the people I owe my bills to every month. Everybody's been really flexible with it, but I still have rent coming up in like 10 days or whatever, and I still haven't gotten my stimulus or unemployment yet.
Yeah.
So while I'm not in dire straits at the moment, I luckily have a little bit saved. My wife has a little bit saved. So we're in better spots than other people, but I think there's a certain point that people get to when they start resorting to doing crazy stuff. Like there's only so far you can be pushed and feel like you have no other option before you start resorting to crazy stuff. And I think if we don't get these stimulus checks and the unemployment stuff taken care of and start getting people taken care of, then there's a danger for things related to that to come out. So that being said, a lot of these protesters that you're seeing out, that's not what it's about. I'm seeing I want a haircut or I want to play golf.
Yep.
It's like that's not important. What you're saying is I'm mildly inconvenienced right now. I'm mildly inconvenienced.
Yeah.
And there are people, I truly believe there are people that are really having a hard time putting food on the table, for sure. But like you're saying, I want a haircut and I want to play golf. How dare you ruin my golf season? It's like, that's not, it really opened my eyes to, we talk about socialism and stuff, about how we're trying to push these progressive agendas and elections and things like that. But dude, part of me gets like, I don't know if I can be that hopeful. I know we've seen slight change,
Right.
like incremental change over the years, because we keep talking about these things. We keep saying these things should happen. Universal health care should happen. All these things should happen, and we're seeing incremental change on it. But when I see like these people out protesting, it's a me mindset.
Yeah.
We don't have a collective we anymore.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to exist in the country as a whole. I will say that I'm friends with a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds, beliefs, all that stuff. And we can be really civil and be great to each other. But there's just this growing, I don't know what you call the movement, but of people that just, it's about me, what about me? And I think that's what, I think obviously Trump really tapped into that during the last election, for sure, to that, I guess, disenfranchised majority, we'll call them.
Yeah. That that individualization or whatever, or some people call it social atomization, but it's isolation to the self. Then the self becomes like super fucking proud to be by themselves, right? They're like, I don't need anybody else, all this other stuff. That does tap into like when we see protests, that's like a political thing. It's either a right or left thing. When we start to see actual desperation and need for material change, there will be a right or left to that. It's just going to be the beautiful noise of crime.
Yeah. I mean, that sort of thing doesn't discriminate, you know, like,
Yep.
There's people on both sides of the aisle that don't have enough money all the time, or can't pay all their bills, or don't have this or that, especially right now.
Yeah.
And that's not, there's no discrimination there. So like, it's really interesting. I think part of that aspect obviously is unifying, for you to be able to look across at somebody who you usually don't agree with and you're going through the same thing. Because I think the problem, and I'm super ranty and like tangential and stuff, so I apologize. But I think part of the problem is so much of our interaction nowadays really isn't interpersonal. It's through devices, like you and I, right? So like we live 2 hours away from each other, and we used to live, further than that, but we've lived together and we hung out and stuff. But when you actually get to sit down and talk to a person, that takes away all the keyboard warrior antics that people get into. People are a lot more brave on the internet than they are in person. But I really think that's helped part of the division that we feel, because everybody now has a voice, even if it's not a good one. Which I understand. I understand the irony of saying that as I'm speaking on a podcast. I fully 100% understand that. Like, hey, you should listen to what I'm saying right now, but also, like, I may not know what I'm talking about. And I'll just say, this is my personal opinion and feeling of my 30 years of life and life experience that I've had so far. What was his name you had on 2 days ago?
Will. Yeah.
Will.
Co-host.
Oh, no, not Will.
Oh, yesterday was Zach.
Zach. Okay. So Zach, talked a little bit about his background and stuff, and, about white privilege and things like that. Not to go too deep into it, but, I about 5 years ago, I really started thinking about privilege. And part of me was like, this is bullcrap, man. Like, I didn't have white privilege. I was at that mindset. I was like, I didn't have this. I came from a lower middle class family. We never went hungry. We never didn't have clothes. We always had the necessities that we needed in life. And my parents worked their asses off to help take care of us. But like, our house wasn't great. We didn't have amazing things. We were very lower class. And that's where I learned work ethic was from them, though. It's like, if you work hard to do this, then you can move up, because obviously that's the world that we've been born into. So I was like, man, I busted my ass to get to where I am. And it wasn't until, maybe 3 or 4 years ago that I really stepped back and was talking to like-minded people, people of color, who work equally as hard, and haven't had the same opportunities afforded to them. And, that was really eye-opening for me. It was like, now I get it. Now I understand what this privilege is. The privilege isn't that I'm going to be a millionaire just because I look like this. It's going to be like, the opportunities there are easier for you. You get less questioned about things. People believe you more on the surface. I could go to the Capitol building with a gun, an assault rifle, and my G.I. Joe fatigue and not get shot.
Yep.
And, so that was really eye-opening for me. It was like, I came from a lower middle-class family, and I worked hard and, and got to where I am. But it wasn't 100% solely on merit. I do believe that there's some things that probably people look the other way on if I made a mistake on something. It gave me an easier time on, or just because. And so I didn't really understand what that meant until just a few years ago. So I wanted to share that perspective as somebody who was kind of on the other side of it, and then had that like, oh,
I think
you know,
I think that's a super common experience, like for people to get to it slow.
yeah,
I think that's why it was really like talking to Zach was really interesting, and getting his perspective on like the praxis of talking to people that may be defensive about it, because I lived that same slow realization instead of it's not just an aha, and it wasn't like someone feeding it into my head.
right,
It was just being receptive and respecting a person and listening. And yeah, for
yeah,
me, I was really, speaking of privilege, I was also privileged to have that happen to me early, like where I did understand the idea of white privilege, and I did understand that much earlier. And I didn't get like entrenched in that fragility, and
yeah,
um, because it just I saw so many examples of it so early. So,
yeah,
are we
yeah. Hey, sorry.
giving you roadhead right now?
Yeah, the fuzz is beside me, so
Oh yeah.
because I'm driving right
Fuck
now.
12. Fuck 12.
Um, you know, so I think everybody. Here's how I look at it: is like, yeah, we can't be that fragile for sure, 100%. We can't be so afraid to call a spade, basically. Like if we see some white BS, like, let's call it what it is.
Right.
But that also made me understand that I can never 100% fully understand what it's like to be a person of color in this country. I can never understand that fully. I can sympathize with it, and I can use my voice as a majority to try to help enact change to it, but I can't fully understand it. And I think that's part of the problem with some of our identity politics now is we're going around and, like I have some friends that are people of color. They don't want some white savior BS, you know?
Big time.
And there's this it was an interview I saw years ago. It was like one of those man on the street things that like Daily Show or did or whatever. And they interviewed a bunch of kind of younger white people that are, hipsters, whatever you want to call them, like in Williamsburg or something.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how voter ID laws are racist and stuff, and that really affects black people. And it's like, first off, let's pause there for a second, because why do you think that more black people don't have IDs? There is some truth in that. There is some truth in that, especially in places like Alabama.
Right.
Because Alabama, we have so many rural populations that are so far from things and don't have money. And then, of course, with the whole thing they did a few years ago with moving and closing those offices and stuff, it made it much harder for poor parts of the community to be able to get an ID. But so they interviewed all these white people first to set it up, and then they just went and found, people of color on the street, and they asked them, like, hey, do you have an ID? And they were like, yeah, it's like they don't need some of that fake, because to me that's racist too. Like that is like soft racism, I think is the word you used before, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's not outright like, oh, blah blah blah. It's, oh, they don't have this because they're this, and I want to help them. Like, no, just talk to them like a normal freaking human being, like,
Right.
hey, what are problems that are affecting you? Reality is, a lot of the times it's the similar problems that are affecting us. I think there are some differences. Obviously, if we get into like police stuff, right? That sort of stuff. But overall, I think the human experience is pretty shared with a few facets. But that's why you have to be open-minded, which is what you were saying a second ago. It's like you have to be receptive. You can't go around thinking it's my way or the highway. Dude, I had this moment one day where, and I think it really helped me, become who I am now, which, take that for what it's worth. It's it's an okay thing. It's a work in progress, as everybody is. But
Right.
I just had somebody had told me something. Somebody we used to work with, by the way, but I'm not going to name drop him. The guy I love. But it was just it was not even important. It was some random inane fact that he told me. It was like, oh yeah, blah, 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 blah. And I just repeated it one day to somebody without thinking about it. Never researched it. And somebody was like, that's not true. I was like, yeah, it is. And at that moment, I went, oh my God, literally everything I've been told in my life could be false.
Right.
I've never taken the moment to really try to research it. So that was the moment from there on where it's like, I'm going to just research everything and try to put together, you know, what I think based on that instead of just taking it at face value. And with social media and stuff, that's allowed people to have those knee-jerk reactions with these misleading memes and things like that where they share them and somebody just sees it and that's the extent of their research.
Yeah.
There's nothing further. And they're just like, on the surface, this is it. I saw one earlier. It was apparently started by Martin Shkreli, the pharmacy guy.
How's he starting memes in jail?
Well, he was, and then he wasn't. He also bought that Wu-Tang album.
Free my man.
He started this whole thing where it was meant to be discrediting the LGBT plus community. And it was a picture. You've probably seen it. I think it was called The Clover. And it was like a grown man, but it had a inside silhouette of a little girl.
Yeah,
so it was like he
didn't start that one, but it was a 4chan thing. Like that's the clover is the logo for 4chan is a clover.
Yeah.
So but the concept of like, and it's weird because it's taken on its own thing where I don't know if you've heard of MAP.
Mm-mm.
It's a thing on Twitter. It's fucking crazy. They're real people that instead of calling themselves like, you know, pedophiles or like talking to their shrink about it and working through like not doing it, they're like advocates for their lifestyle and call it minor attracted persons. So the old version was fake, right? To like, discredit LGBT, but it is like the idea that everything is on the table and that social norms are what's keeping everybody down is absolutely something to like, wait, no, it's not. Violence is wrong. Like children consent. So, and that goes back to that, like the atomization. There's no solidarity socially. There's only individuals. And when that's the case, everything that's up here is all that exists, and it's you versus the world, and you don't get to fucking nitpick and you definitely don't have like, you know, iron sharpens iron. You don't have that to like fix the rough edges of you, and you can't second guess all that shit, right? So and that's not like me being pro-Christianity, but it is being like, I mean, the Acts Church figured something really special out in like how to make people not be fucked up and, you know, rape kids or whatever. So
so there's also apparently this thing called NAMBLA. Are you familiar with NAMBLA? It's
very
like the national. Okay, so apparently it's not around anymore, but it existed for like 40 something years or something, or maybe it's still around. So to give you some insight, I'm in this group on Facebook, and then literally all it is a bunch of people sharing really messed up memes and humor. It's like black humor, it's dark. But what's really interesting about that group of people is if I've had like a really shitty day or something, or like somebody has lost a family member, or somebody's dog died, like even though we share like this really messed up sense of humor, we can also go to that same group and have these people that are Republican, conservative, liberal, gay, straight, you know, trans, all these people in this group come together and support because we have this shared thing. So that, to me, that goes back to like, you know, I think there's more there than there isn't, but I am also fearful of like when I see these extremes of like of people going out and demanding haircuts open again. You know, it's
Right.
just like you're in the wrong place. But my curiosity, and maybe you can answer this, is like, so at a basic idea of like what socialism is like, let's take care of each other, ultimately, right? That's kind of an underlying
In the
thing.
short term, yeah, for sure.
So where does that come from? Where does the idea of let's take care of each other really spawn from? Because you mentioned Christianity a second ago, and I'm not going to say pro or against because
Right.
everybody makes that decision, but like, does it have basis going back to that? You know, I've always seen there's people that have been like, oh, Jesus was a socialist. And,
Right.
you
So
know,
the Acts Church, Jesus didn't found the Acts Church, right? The Acts Church was organically created, and yeah, they gravitated towards that messianic figure in their like little Hebrew commune, right? But that wasn't the only commune that existed under that like I mean, we're talking like gnarly forms of feudalism. So
yeah,
to call it socialism is kind of reductionist. It's kind of stupid. I mean, I'm not going to say it's wrong to do that, but it is like we see memes like that, and it's like it miseducates people as to what socialism even is, because socialism is an answer to capitalism, right? The bad parts of it. It recognizes the historical place capitalism holds as like post-feudal, post-mercantil, then we get to capital. And it says, oh yeah, capitalism fucking, dude, compared to having a feudal system, thumbs up. Great job, right?
yeah.
We're not mandated by the king to tithe anymore. Fuck yeah. Right? This rocks. I love this thing, right? And we see like little forms of revolution throughout that system, that transition from mercantilism through capitalism with, is slavery part of it? And then that two types of capitalism fight it out and say, yes, no, we call it something else. Don't call it slavery, right? You have to have freedom, right? So that's all that happening. All those things happened under feudalism too. Does the king own you? And then some people said yes, some people said no. Does the church get to tell you that your oldest child belongs to this person, right? All those weird little, I don't want to call them social issues, but like human rights issues happen under those previous modes of production too. Socialism is the thing that we're doing next.
I love the confidence.
And the cool thing about that is we don't really get to know what that is, right? So it's the thing that we're like, well, that's probably what we're going to call the next mode of production, where every worker owns a piece of the means of production, right? Notice in that short little thing, I didn't say every worker finds every member of society that needs help and helps them, right? Now, finding every member of society that needs help and helping them builds solidarity, builds political autonomy, and allows us then to have the 99.9% of people that are victims of that system as one cohesive economic unit, as one cohesive political movement against the imperialist structure that is those 9 people that rape children, right? That is the great Satan, right?
Yeah, I think the word solidarity is kind of a theme of this conversation today. Solidarity for sure.
Big time. Big time.
Because, like I said, I think people really do believe it, and there's been, so look, I've not paid attention to politics until 5-10 years ago, just because I was young and didn't care. So like growing up, I grew up at what I remember, I grew up at the end of Clinton. Here's what I remember from Clinton. I remember war. I remember Kosovo, right, and all that stuff. I go under W, obviously 9/11, very traumatic. More war. my father lost his job under W during the recession.
Big time. A lot of people.
And war, right? More war, lost his job. Then we get Obama in office, who inherits one of the biggest messes probably ever to be handed off to somebody. And I think he did some things good. I think he did some things bad, obviously. And I know you have a lot of strong thoughts on what he did, but that was the first president I ever really thought like, oh, I feel like he's doing an okay job, because I saw this change. And it's what made me realize the things that I cared about socially, is when that first started to come into my head. Growing up, I was taught, you don't hate, you don't do all this stuff. If somebody looks different than you, none of that. I grew up in public schools. I got beat up all the time. Like all these things, I experienced that, but I never was once like, F them all. It was just like that person did that specifically. So I grew up under that mindset, but I never really knew what I was about until, probably 10 years ago or so. And that's when I was like, like gay rights and all this stuff, that's really important to me. I know people that fall under that umbrella, and like they should be able to have the things they want, right? So and now it's so weird, like we're in this really weird convoluted era of like, I can hardly keep up with the crap that's happening every day, because we have a guy that's constantly saying things every day that aren't true or half truths or misleading. And then we've got the people that are riled up by that. I don't know. It's a weird time, man. It's a weird time to live in. So like, I know you said the other day, like, not excited about Biden, right? I don't know many people that are. But when it comes down to it, if he's a candidate on there, like, I didn't vote last time.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't a fan of Hillary, and nobody I knew that were Democrat or left leaning or liberal, whatever you want to call them, liked her. Like everybody I knew that was into that, I asked, and they were like, yeah, no, we don't like her. So I didn't vote, but I'm going to vote this time because I feel it's important, and I'm going to vote for the candidate that's on there. And I hate to say that, because I was like, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to vote for that person. But like, when I look into the future, I think about my kids. I have two girls, right? So they fall under, they're two white girls. So like, they're a minority of a majority, but still, as women, they have a harder time getting the things that I do. I want to make sure that whoever gets next into the Supreme Court is going to have their best interest in mind, Yeah. So that's the big thing upcoming with that election, I think, is like, we look into the future, and we have to, that goes back to it's not just about me. It's about we. And obviously my perspective is different than yours.
Right.
You don't have children that you're invested in, but and that's not to.
The one thing I will say about Supreme Court, before Bernie even dropped out, like,
which I hate.
My position was always in the Democratic Party, Bernie was the compromise, right? That is us compromising as elected to get literally anything. That's the compromise. That's the base level. That's as far right as I'm willing to even talk about voting for, right? And when we were talking about this, like, before he even dropped out, one of my first thoughts was like, oh, they're going to use the Supreme Court like a cudgel again, like they did last time with Hillary.
Yeah.
Because they go, well, this Ruth Bader Ginsburg is going to drop out or die or whatever. It's like, well, she said some like racist aunt on Facebook shit about Kaepernick. So like, let her, like, she's not a good person, Anyway, but I went back and watched the Clarence Thomas hearings, the whole thing, all 9.5 hours combined of like days and days and days. And Biden is not our friend when it comes to appointing someone to the Supreme Court, and especially if you're talking about women or any kind of oppressed person. He is not our friend in that.
Oh, I know.
In that position.
I know, but when I look at it, it's like, what are my options?
Right.
And look, what if I don't vote it's not going to change Alabama,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know, most
sure.
likely. But at the same time, like, I do understand that quandary of like, I don't morally feel good about doing this, you know, and that's a problem that I think a lot of liberal-minded people um, have. Is, I think you said this the other day, but like a lot of people on the right don't give a shit about morally correct. You know, it's just like, hey, this is our guy, we're voting for him.
Yep.
I like never realized that. Like, how many people just like, I'm gonna vote straight ticket just because I'm a Republican. It's like, okay, why are you a Republican? I just am, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it becomes like a thing where there's no talking to them. It
Mhm.
was really illuminating during the 2015, 2016 primary process for the Republicans. 'Cause again, especially at the time, I did have a lot of like Republican friends
Mhm.
for work at the time, you know, because I was working with like,
Sure.
I was in the field of making as many millionaires as I possibly could stop being millionaires.
Sure.
And a couple of them killed themselves, inshallah. And good, you know, I did good work.
Wow.
Proud of myself. Anyway, the as I talked to those people about like when it started to coalesce, it's not like when you talk to morally upright people that what doesn't matter what their labels are, um, they have to actually think about it, right? It was
Yeah.
like, oh, I think Cruz is going to be the guy. I think Jeb's going to be the guy. I think, right? And it dissolved when Trump figured out the fucking CNN algorithm, basically. He was just like,
Mhm.
if I just say ridiculous shit, they're going to put me on TV.
Sure.
And I'm the opposition to that hegemonic liberal oppression, right? That thing, that big elitist sphere, right?
Sure.
And so he won, not because not because he had better ideas. He realized that they don't have ideas, right? He wasn't in a sphere of thought where there is ideas as a concept. There is no
Yeah.
ideology to the right, and really, that is the indicator of how far right that Democrats have become. Is that they've lost ideology, right?
Yeah.
The DNC has zero ideology. The blue MAGAs, or whatever people want to call them, there is no ideology to it anymore. It's just stop the left. And that is, both parties are just doing that, which is just at all costs stop the left. Trotsky said there'd be days like this. There'd be days like this, Trotsky said. I've been saying that since 2015.
You know what it sounds like almost when you put it in perspective like that, it almost sounds like a survival mechanism. You know,
It is, yeah.
they realize you know, when people they have that fight or flight, basically, it's like they realize their time's coming and they're doing everything they can to preserve it. I think it's really interesting that you said, you know, you worked with a lot of people that had a lot of money and they're Republican, and I wonder why that is. Like, why is it that so many people that are Republican also have a lot of money, or is it because they got money and were like, hey, these policies help me more, basically?
So that's a chicken egg question, and it actually doesn't matter, right? That's the beautiful part. It doesn't matter. They get to the same place either way, right? Either one, they can be like the pick me professional managerial class that's like, you know, they've got people that they're the boss of, and then they know that there's way further up to go than that, and they know they're not in charge of anything really, but they know they've just got to act stressed at work. The old George Costanza thing, right? Just, I'm doing something, I promise, you know. So on the one hand, they know that the people above them definitely want them to be like in line, and the
Yeah.
more in line they are, the more likely they are to keep their job or their position in that artificial hierarchy.
Yeah.
You know, the old like
I see.
Amos and Andy, the kingfish thing, you know. like the you know, I'm absolutely going to do what you say, that whole thing. It is based in a material interest, right?
Yeah.
No matter what position in that hierarchy a person is, a person could be honestly poorer than me, right? I know people that have less than me, that make less than me, that don't own their home, right? Like, I mean, have way worse off than me, that are way more likely to suck their landlord's dick than I am, right? It's specifically in social media, in that thing where it's like, what are you getting out of telling everybody that you want your landlord to be rich? Like, I don't, like, or their first reaction when they see a video, like 2 years ago, they see a video of a cop shooting somebody, and their first fucking reaction is, well, what happened leading up to that, right?
Yeah.
And then now it's, you know.
I was there. That I'm not gonna lie. Like, my reaction was like, what led to this? And because when you grow up, that's what you're taught, right? Like, the cops, you listen to the cops, you do what you're told. But like, there's truth to that. Like, if you want to live, obviously, you know, you should do that. But we shouldn't have to be that on eggshells to survive. Their job isn't to shoot us, you know.
Yeah.
And look, I've known people that are good cops. I have a sticker on the back of my car for a cop that was slain because he was just like, where I grew up in a really small town. Dude was always around. He was just a great guy, and some punk kid just walked up and shot him at a gas station one day, you know. And he was a good guy, genuinely a good guy. So, you know, I am not as extreme in that sense as you are, but like, at the same time, their job isn't to shoot us, right? So like,
It's not
their job is to protect and serve.
Right. Yeah.
What?
I said,
Yeah. So, what's that?
I said it's not supposed to be, right? If you believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I could probably talk about this forever, but I actually got to run. But I want to show you something real quick.
Okay.
You're talking about 90s, right? So hopefully you can see.
Oh shit!
Hang on, a third eye blind. This is in my car, by the way. This is Violent Femmes.
Hell yeah! I'm on
Wallflowers.
Wallflowers.
And then lastly, this is Gin Blossoms.
And before you get off, that's awesome. Before you get off, I've got to make, which one am I going to make play first? We're going to do or not first. We're going to go off with a thing that our buddy Zane made us listen to earlier, and it actually unironically slaps.
Not that bad.
Naked Goo Goo Dolls off of Boy Named Goo. There's like 3 good tracks on that record. The rest of it's so bad that we wrote them off for an entire like 20-year period and said this. There's some jangle in there, man. There's some dirty, funky goodness, you know. It's all about solidarity. It's all about building coalitions and saying, look, that one moment of the Goo Goo Dolls was special, important. It had something to say. They learned about alternate tunings. They were big into Nick Drake. You know what I mean? They did that CGCGCE, CGCGECE, right? They did those 2 weird tunings, and they just did the damn thing. And guys, we are out of here on that note. Thank you to Jeremy Aiken. Jeremy. Sorry, I pronounced your name wrong, so that's good. Later, guys. Appreciate it.
Later.